If you have ever bought a theme park ticket and thought that was the expensive part, you were wrong before you even walked through the gate. Your ticket is the cheapest thing you will buy all day, and the park built it that way on purpose. Here is the tell. For about 20 years, skipping the line was free. It came with your ticket, no extra charge. Then one day the park took that free thing, put a price on it, and started selling it back to you by the day, like a meter running on your own patience. Today, at the biggest parks, jumping the line can cost up to $449 per person on top of the ticket you already bought. And the price climbs on the busiest days, exactly when you need it most. Now, most people shrug this off. It is just a park. Everyone knows it is a tourist trap. You walk in expecting to get squeezed a little. But the squeeze you can see is not the one that matters. The real machine here is almost invisible, and the biggest part of it does not even live inside the park. You cannot see it while you are standing in that line. There is no sign that tells you which business you are actually funding. By the time you would notice, you have already paid into all three because you assume a theme park is a rides business, a company that builds roller coasters and sells you a ticket to ride them. Only the rides are close to the least profitable thing in the entire resort. The gate is bait. Behind it sit three businesses that have almost nothing to do with the coasters. One of them was built by a man who hid his own name from the state of Florida so he could buy a swamp before anyone realized who was buying. Another one turned a company that makes cartoons into something that looks almost exactly like a government, with its own fire department and, on paper, the legal right to build a nuclear plant. And the third one is strapped to your wrist right now, quietly learning how to sell you more. We are getting to all three, and you will never walk through those gates the same way again. Let me start with the one you can already see. Start inside the gates, because the moment you walk through them, you stop being a guest and become something else. A wall at the park has a whole day to open. Here is the number that runs a modern theme park, and it is not attendance. It is how much each person spends once they are inside. And the proof is almost funny. In its most recent year, the biggest theme park company on the planet quietly admitted that the number of people coming through its gates actually fell by about 1%. Fewer visitors. And yet that same year, the parks division posted a record $10 billion in operating profit, up 8%. Read that again. They let in fewer people and made more money than ever. That is not an accident. That is the entire strategy. They have figured out that the real business is not filling the park. It is how deep they can reach into the pocket of each person already inside. So the ticket stays a loss leader, and everything past the turnstile is engineered to separate you from your money. Your soda costs the park about 30 cents to make. It does not tell you that. It sells for $6, and you only realize how insane that is when you compare it to a store down the road. Except there is no store down the road. That is the whole trick. The popcorn bucket, the churro, the turkey leg, the souvenir cup, all marked up to levels no normal shop could ever get away with, because you are trapped inside with no competitor for miles, and they have gotten clever about it. That collectible popcorn bucket that costs around $14, the refills are under $3. It is a razor and blades trick with butter on it. They release the buckets in limited runs, put a 2 per person limit on them to make them feel scarce, and people line up for an hour to buy a plastic bucket they will later resell online. That is not a snack. That is a manufactured collectible. Even the ticket itself is quietly designed as bait. It used to be one flat price. Now it moves by the day, priced low when the park is empty and high when you actually want to go. On the quietest days, you can still get in for around $119. But on peak days, one famous park just crossed $200 a ticket for the very first time in its 55-year history, hitting $209. The cheap ticket exists to get you through the door. Once you are inside, every single thing you touch carries the real margin. But the sharpest tool of all is the line skip. Remember, this used to be free. Then they turned it into a paid product, and for a long time, nobody outside the company knew how much money that quietly printed, until a data breach. In 2024, hackers leaked the company's own internal files, and buried in them was a number the public was never supposed to see. The paid line skip system had pulled in more than $720 million in under 3 years. $720 million, and that is only through the middle of that year. It is nearly pure profit, because they did not build a single new ride to earn it. They just took the thing that used to be free and charged you for the wait. It got so aggressive that the company's own chief executive went on stage and admitted it out loud, saying that in their zeal to grow profits, they had, in his words, been a little too aggressive about pricing. When the person running the machine tells you the machine got greedy, believe him. The rides are the bait. The spending floor is the business. But here is the part that flips the whole thing. The biggest business on this land is not even inside the park. To see it, you have to go back 60 years to a man quietly buying up a swamp under a fake name. In the 1960s, when Walt Disney went looking for land in Florida, he knew that the second his name got out, every price would explode. So he hid. He bought the land through a string of shell companies with invented names. One was called the Empty Lot Company. Say that out loud. Empty Lot. Another was named the I-4 Corporation, a quiet joke about the interstate I-4 that ran past the property. Through these paper companies, he bought parcel after parcel in cash, delaying the paperwork, so that no seller would ever realize they were all being assembled by the same buyer. One single tract, around 8,500 acres, was bought from a Florida state senator who thought he was selling off cattle pasture. And it worked for a while. The earliest swamp acres reportedly went for as little as $80 an acre. Then a reporter at the Orlando Sentinel named Emily Bavar started asking questions, flew out to the original park in California, and from Walt's own nervous non-answers, pieced it together. She broke the story. The buyer was Disney. And the moment that name became public, the price of the remaining land jumped by more than 1,000%. Same dirt. The only thing that changed was that they learned his name. In the end, he assembled roughly 27,000 acres, a piece of Florida twice the size of Manhattan, for about $5 million. And then came the move almost nobody talks about, the one that turns this from a real estate story into something stranger. He convinced the state of Florida to let the company govern that land like its own private county. Think about what that actually means. On that property, the company wrote its own building codes. It ran its own fire department. It had the legal power to tax itself and to issue its own government bonds. And here is the clause almost nobody believes when they first read it. On paper, that charter even let the company build its own airport and its own nuclear power plant, a company that makes cartoons with the legal right to go nuclear. For half a century, a theme park was, in a real legal sense, its own local government, on land it had bought in disguise. And if you think that private government was just a technicality, watch what happened when someone tried to take it away. A few years ago, the company publicly criticized a new state law. The state's governor responded by moving to strip the company of that private district and hand control to a board he appointed instead. And here is the detail that proves how real and how entangled this arrangement had become. That little private government was carrying around $1 billion of its own bond debt. If the state simply erased the district, that $1 billion in debt did not vanish. It would have landed on the two ordinary Florida counties next door and their taxpayers, one of which estimated it would cost it $163 million a year. Real debt, real taxpayers. You cannot casually abolish a government that owes $1 billion. So the fight dragged through the courts and finally settled, with the company agreeing to pour up to $17 billion more into the property. The theme park did not just build on the land. It became a shadow government on top of it, so deeply wired into the real one that even a governor could not cleanly pull it out. And on that self-governed land, it built the second half of the empire, more than 30,000 hotel rooms. It is such a good landlord that it even rents land to rival hotels that then sit on its property and pay it rent. And then there is the timeshare. It sells you a deeded piece of a hotel room, yours for about 50 years, after which the room quietly reverts back to the company and you pay maintenance dues the entire time. So it sells you the room, keeps the land, collects the dues, and gets the room back to sell again. The rides are just the anchor tenant. The park is a real estate empire that happens to have roller coasters sitting on top of it. And there is a third machine, quieter than the other two, and this one follows you home. Because a theme park does not just sell you a day, it sells you a character over and over for the rest of your life. Think about why the park was built in the first place. It exists to take the movies you already love and turn them into a place you have to pay to stand inside. And here is the tell, the single number that reframes the entire company. The division that runs the parks earns far more profit than the division that actually makes the films. In its most recent year, the Parks and Experiences arm brought in about $10 billion in operating profit, a record. The entire rest of the company, the film studio, the streaming service, and the television networks, all combined, made under $5 billion. Let that sink in. The parks out-earn the movie studio, the streaming service, and the TV channels put together with room to spare. The company that makes the movies now makes most of its money from the parks those movies feed. The films are the loss leader, the parks are the payoff, and those characters become a toll you pay again and again. A single movie becomes a 14-acre land that reportedly costs $1 billion to build, then a ride, then a hotel, then a wall of merchandise, and that wall is bigger than you could imagine. In 1 year alone, shoppers around the world bought more than $63 billion of that one company's licensed products, making it the single biggest licensor on the planet. The company does not pocket all of that, it takes a royalty on every sale. But sit with what that number really is. $63 billion of people voluntarily buying the toy, the shirt, and the costume of the character the ride was quietly advertising the whole time. But the toy is not enough for them. They want you back every single year. So they will sell you a pass that quietly turns a once-a-year trip into a subscription, one that at the top tier runs around $1,600 a year. A day out becomes a standing charge on your life. And then comes the part almost nobody reads before they strap it on. They hand you a wristband and tell you it is magic. It is a sensor. The company spent around $1 billion building this system. The band is your room key, your ticket, and your wallet all at once. Short-range readers log everything you buy. Long-range readers scattered through the park track where you walk, what you ride, and how long you wait, feeding a system built to know you well enough to sell you more. You feel looked after. You are being read. The magic is the data. So what could actually break a machine this well built? On paper, plenty, and this is the honest part of the story. These parks are brutally expensive to run, and the crowds are sensitive to the economy. For the first time in a long time, real competition has arrived. In 2025, a rival company opened an enormous new park nearby, a $7 billion bet. The first all-new major American theme park in about 25 years. And remember that attendance number from the start, the one that fell about 1%. That is the crack. The whole model now runs on squeezing more out of each visitor instead of attracting more of them. And the company has admitted that its growth is coming from its richest guests, the exact people who disappear first in a downturn. A deep enough recession or enough people finally deciding the squeeze is not worth it could genuinely empty these parks. But to be fair, I have to steelman the other side because the numbers cut both ways. Even with attendance falling, and even with a $7 billion rival opening right next door, the park still posted that record $10 billion. That is not a trick. That is pricing power. The rarest thing in business. The ability to charge more and have people pay it anyway. The 1960s land bet was genuinely visionary. Nobody could assemble that self-governing land bank today at any price. And the character flywheel. Movie to land to ride to hotel to merchandise to loyalty and back to the next movie is a moat no competitor can rent. Because no one else owns that library of characters and the physical places to charge you for standing inside them. The rival's giant new park did not even shrink the pie. It grew the whole region, and everybody, including the incumbents, sold more. The uncomfortable truth is not that the machine is failing. It is that it is built so well that the rides, the part you thought you were paying for, are the part it needs the least. So here is the only question that matters. You can now see all three businesses hiding behind the gate. The spending floor dressed up as a day out. The secret real estate empire and the private government under your feet. And the character you will pay for your whole life. Next time you buy that line skip and strap on that wristband, you will know exactly which of the three just took your money. So here is what I actually want to know. What is the most you have ever spent inside a park in a single day, not counting the ticket to get in? Drop the real number in the comments, the honest one, and then tell me which of the three you could never give up. The wallet, the land, or the wristband.